We're now going to look at how to intervene if you overhear or you witness something going on within the staff that you manage. Now, we've put some suggestions on the slides, and you may be able to think of other ways which are equally effective. If this is the first time you've witnessed an employee speaking inappropriately, speak to them in private. If, for example, they've made a sexual joke, you could ask them if they realise that this could upset someone, and that if it did, it could lead to them being accused of sexual harassment. That may be enough for them to, rethink their idea of a joke and think before they speak in future. Another approach is to ask some open-ended questions to find out why they've behaved in a particular way or made a particular joke. For example, you might say, "How do you think that joke was received?" And that may feel less like an attack, and it might encourage them to reflect on what they've said and consider how it impacted on others and change their behaviour. They need to have understood the section on jokes and banter, and you need to find out if they know about your organisation's policy and understand that they can be disciplined if they repeat their behaviour. And depending on their answer, you may want to ask them to watch the training again. You could also intervene directly by making it clear that their behaviour is unacceptable, saying things like, "Cut it out, that's not funny," or "You're making people feel uncomfortable." You can also say, "That's not acceptable," and that might be enough for them to stop. But you should also follow that up by speaking to them in private to reinforce the message. And if the employee reacts in a way that suggests that they don't think they've done anything wrong, or they repeat their behaviour, you may need to escalate matters. Speak to your HR team if you're not sure what to do. You also need to make sure that they've undertaken the training on sexual harassment. So let's assume that you've received a complaint. What do you do now? So this next section of slides is going to help you to deal with a complaint that's made by a member of your staff about a member of your staff. Okay, so it's not going to specifically look at third parties. We've included a couple of quotes from women who have made complaints to their employer to demonstrate how important it is that you do more than simply direct staff to the grievance policy that your employer has. Please have a quick read through the quotes on the slide. As a line manager, it's important that you check in with the person in your team who's made a complaint to find out if, for example, they've accessed the support that's on offer and to ask if they need anything else at this stage. Similarly, it's important to be understanding about how they're feeling. If they've been sexually harassed at work, they may not be able to carry on as normal straight away, and they may need to take a short break away from their workspace to collect themselves. So let's consider the initial steps that you may want to take. You'll see from the slide that we've divided this into the steps that you need to take to support the person who has made the complaint, most of which will hopefully be fairly obvious, and those that you also need to take to support the person who is being complained about. That might sound a bit odd. Why would you want to support someone who is accused of sexual harassment after all? Well, the reason is because you need to treat both parties fairly. Employers have what is called a duty of trust and confidence that is implied into their relationship with their staff. And if you undermine this by treating them badly because, for example, you've assumed they are guilty, they could bring a grievance against you and they could resign and bring a claim against the organisation. The basic principle of fairness means that you shouldn't make any assumptions about their guilt. And you need to wait until the allegations have been properly investigated and that they've been given a chance to give their side of the story. In terms of the person who has come to you with their concerns, this implied duty means taking seriously what they've told you, and you need to work on the basis that they are telling you the truth. Don't get sidetracked or make snap judgments based on what you think of them or the person that they're alleging has sexually harassed them. You also need to ask them if they want to make a formal complaint and explain where they can get support. You'll also need to signpost where the person who's been accused of sexual harassment can obtain support too. If the person who has made the complaint works alongside the person they've accused, you may have to consider if they can work together whilst the matter is investigated. Plus, if the allegations are particularly serious or you worry that the person who is being accused may try and put pressure on witnesses to support their version of events, you may need to consider suspending them. In both cases, I would recommend you speak to HR about this to make sure that taking either step is appropriate. Even if it is, they will help you to explain to both parties why you have done what you have. And that's important to avoid them jumping to conclusions about the outcome before an investigation has taken place. So let's then look at the options. If we go back to the question about the steps you need to take if someone has complained to you about being sexually harassed, you need to be explaining to them the options that they have available. For example, do they want to make a formal complaint or would they prefer you to have a quiet word with the member of staff to start off with? If they want to bring a formal complaint, you'll need to explain that someone will investigate it, and once that's happened, a decision will be made about whether to take disciplinary action against the person they've accused. If they don't want to take the matter any further, you need to make a written record of what they've told you and ask them if you want them to have a quiet word with the person in question or they would prefer to speak to them themselves. Either way, you need to keep the situation under review, check in with them regularly, make sure that nothing else has happened, and if it hasn't improved, you need to explain that you may need to escalate the matter so that it is properly addressed. So on that point, what happens if the person that has made the allegations don't actually want you to take it any further? Even if the employee in question has said they don't want you to take action and won't lodge a formal complaint, you may still need to do something about it. Now, that can be extremely difficult to manage, and you'll need to balance their wishes, so what they've asked you to do or not to do, against the risk that the harassment that they're complaining about will actually continue either against them or someone else. These type of situations are tricky to deal with, and you'll need to speak to HR for advice if you're not sure what to do. We're now going to look at what considerations you need to bear in mind if you're asked to investigate a complaint. So we've already explained that part of following a fair procedure is to investigate a complaint. And as a line manager, you may be asked to investigate something, but you shouldn't do this unless you know what you're doing. And ideally, you would have received training to explain how to properly investigate allegations. This training doesn't go into that in any detail, but we do have other training modules that do that. The big problem for many investigations is that they can drag on much longer than people expect. And sometimes that's for good reasons. You may need to speak to many people and it can take time to do that. Please bear in mind that unexpected delays really impact on the person making the complaint. We've included a couple of quotes from women who have made formal complaints, which hopefully reinforce that point. The point to take from this, though, is that if you are investigating a complaint, try and give an accurate time frame about how long you expect it to be before you finish your investigation. And if it looks as though it's going to take you longer than you anticipated, just let them know. The worst thing you can do is keep them in the dark. And that's also good advice for the person that you are investigating. They're also likely to feel anxious and will want to know when they can expect to hear the outcome. Right, we've now got to the stage in the training where we're going to run through a few scenarios to see whether you can apply what you've learned. Now, we've based all of these scenarios on a hypothetical line manager, a chap we've called Doug.